We're just going to wait a little minute so more people can hop on. I hope you guys have been well. Long time I don't see everyone. Well, it's now 6:15 and that's the time that we're supposed to start. Can everyone hear me? Is it okay? My voice? Yep. I'm gonna guess yes. So today, thank you. So today we're going to talk about the parables of Jesus. But before we start, we like to do a small connection with ourselves and with the higher spirits. So my name is Helen, for those who don't know me, and I'm a volunteer here at the Paul and Stephen Spiritus Center. And we're delivering lectures from home just because we're following the orientation of the number of people gathering. So if we sit down and we relax and let's connect, first calm our thoughts and connect with ourselves, with our mentors and guides, and with the mentor and guides of the Paul and Stephen Spiritus Center, and ask them to inspire us and to help us in our journey of learning and growth, and inspire our thoughts and our words. And may we carry what we learn here in our hearts and apply to our daily lives. So be it. Thank you. So thank you, everyone. So today we're going to talk about the parables of Jesus. And just because there might be some people who are not completely familiar with a few concepts, and I want to have everyone on the same page. So I'm just going to explain 3 concepts that are going to be really, really helpful for what we're going to talk about today. So the 3 concepts is, first, our concept of God. So according to the Spirit's teaching, God, in our understanding, is the supreme intelligence and the first cause of all things. So God is not a man or a woman. It's just the divine supreme being that created all. The other thing is Jesus, because we're going to be talking about Jesus and Jesus' teachings. So Jesus, we believe, was created by God, although he's very godlike, because he's a very, very, very high spirit, but he still was created by God, like all of us. And we believe, and this is the 3rd concept, that all spirits were created simple and ignorant. And they have a journey, which is like a spectrum of evolution that goes from spiritual infancy until maturity. So just like us in our physical lives, that we're born, we're a baby, and we have to learn several things, and then we become a toddler, a child, adolescent, and then we grow into a mature human. Spiritually, we can make a parallel. It's going to be something similar. So all of us started as simple and ignorant, and through experience, we gained knowledge, and we developed 2 aspects of our personality or of our being, which is intellectual knowledge and spiritual emotional knowledge. These do not they're not connected. So we might have somebody who is incredibly intelligent in terms of intellect, but morally they still have a lot to learn. And we might have people who are extremely, extremely wise, but still are developing their intellect. So Jesus was on the end of the scale. And how do I know that? Because we're using three books today for the study. So the Spirit's book, and this is in question 625, where the Kardec asked the spirits who was the model, like the best example of a human being that we had here on earth. It wasn't exactly those words. Each translation is slightly different. And the spirits answered with one single word. It was Jesus. And then it complements. So if you want to have a look, it's in the Spirits book. And the question is 625. And they also complement. They say, Jesus is the God-given model of moral perfection toward we should all strive. Animated by the divine spirit, Jesus was the purest being who has ever appeared on earth. And he continues, his teaching accordingly, the purest expression of divine law. So Jesus was the greatest model that earth has ever seen. And yeah, I'm a huge fan of Jesus. I grew up learning the parables, and yeah, it's amazing. I know that some people do not know the parables, do not know Jesus' lives. I really encourage to read and to read again and to study. But look at this. They continue in question 626. Kardec asks, but did Jesus alone reveal the divine laws that have been shown to us? So he wanted to know if Jesus was the one who brought the law. And the Spirit said, as we have said, these laws are evident everywhere. All teachers this is in the Spirit's book, question 262. All the teachers that have ever meditated on wisdom and have been able to grasp and communicate them, they have been around from the remotest time. Through their teachings, these wise men and women, I really like that because this was written in the 1800s, and you could see that the spirits believe in equality, that all humans are equal. So he said, through the teachings of these wise men and women, they prepared the ground for the sowing of the seed. And what seed is that? The seed of knowledge, of divine knowledge. He continues, the divine laws you see are written, I thought this was so beautiful, in the book of nature. Isn't that amazing? They can be read by anyone who searches for them. So in all times, human beings had access to the divine laws through different channels, through different methods, because truth is always available to everyone who searches it, who seeks. And they continue, in every epoch, consequently, you will find upright individuals who have proclaimed the highest moral principles. For these reasons, too, these principles are found in the moral codes of every people, although they might be incomplete, because it's stained by the person who interprets it. So we can see that truth has always been available to people. And as long as you search, you shall find. And why is it important that we lay this foundation? Because we know that, as the Spirit said, that Jesus was the guide and the model we should follow, and that the teachings he brought are the purest form of understanding of the divine laws. And Jesus used a method of teaching that were the parables. And the parables are stories that normally uses a scenario that's easy to understand, and it brings a teaching. And the disciples, they asked Jesus, why do you speak in parables? Because he was telling the parable of the sower, that he sows the seeds, and that I'll get into that later. And it seemed like people couldn't quite understand what he was saying. And they asked Jesus, why is it that you speak by parables? And he said that, he didn't say using these words. You can find it if you want to know the exact words. It's in Matthew chapter 13, and the verses are from 10 to 17. So if you go there, it's this exact passage. I'm just going to use words that are more related to how we speak nowadays. So he said that he spoke through parables because the disciples had access or could understand things that he was saying that the people could not understand. So remember that I said that in the Spiritist philosophy, we believe that people are in different stages of their spiritual development and knowledge. And that's always throughout times. So until this very day, when Jesus came to earth, there were different levels of people in terms of spiritual understanding. And some could grasp like the deep meaning of the things that Jesus brought, but some couldn't. But there's something very important here, that Jesus only used parables when the concepts were something that people couldn't really understand even if he explained it. Whereas some information, he was very, very direct, and he did not use parable. He used extremely simple words that people could relate, that were used in their time, even for the parables. But for example, when he talked about love, respect, charity, he was very, very upfront. Like he would say it as it is. You should love your neighbor as you love yourself. But for example, with charity, he would say that. But because it's a concept that people at that time and still today, we don't have a full understanding of what that is, then he brought the parable of the Good Samaritan. That not only shows you, and it's one of my favorite parables, the step-by-step of how to support someone in need. And we're going to get to that later as well. So he used simple, straightforward information, and he would talk to different people in using different expressions just to adjust to the level of their understanding. And that's what he told the disciples. He said, it's because when I say, people that hear, they don't really understand, or when they see things, they can't really comprehend. And that's why I speak through parables. And there's two other reasons as well, because the parable is actually a tool to make people think. And when you think and you reflect and you get an insight or you get to a conclusion by your own self, like you're accessing that deep part of you that already has that knowledge in you, that comes in a way that you will learn or you will grasp in a more profound way than somebody just telling you what it is. Because that might just go over your head. And whereas if you have something that you don't understand and then you have to think and you have to think of the possibilities, you might get the insight of what it is according to your level of development, and that will be in your heart in a way that you really, really experience it in a different, like it has an emotional aspect to that. So that helps to build the knowledge. So one was because he was adjusting to the level of people's understanding, like he said to the disciples. The other was it's a tool to make people think, and that's like an educational kind of tool, isn't it? And also because it seemed like something extremely simple, but those people who were prepared to understand, they could understand deeper levels of knowledge that were embedded in that story. And I remember when I was studying computer science, I had to learn how to transmit, like how to send a message in a way that the message would arrive wherever it needed to arrive in its purest form. And I remember at the time thinking, oh my God, really Jesus was a genius, because he sent a message 2,000 years ago for us, and it arrived almost intact, like the core. Even if people might have changed a little bit the wording through translation, but the core of the understanding was still there. So that was the other reason, because the parable, it wasn't too confronting, because some people wouldn't see exactly what the parable was about. But now we have more knowledge and we have evolved more than we were when it was 2,000 years ago. And we can revisit the parables. And that's what the spirits told Kardec, that you could revisit in the light of what the spirits brought, or in your own light of knowledge, because we are developing as human beings, independent of the belief system we are. And then we can see the true meaning that Jesus might have brought. And I wanted to share, yes, I still have time. I wanted to share something that's one of the parables, so we can see how the parables have layers of understanding. And if you Google any parable, you will have tons of videos and explanations of meanings. And you can find so many different approaches to the different parables. I'm going to give an example with the parable of the Good Samaritan, because Jesus would tell the story, but he would also use archetypes of personalities, which it was really, really interesting. Because when he used an archetype, if the person was that archetype, he didn't have to assume he was or she was. They could just say, oh, that's the story. That's the man in the story, or that's the woman in the story. But that is a model of aspects of our personality. So for example, the parable of the Good Samaritan, I don't know if everyone knows. So very, very briefly. And if you want to know, just Google the parable of the Good Samaritan. They asked Jesus. Jesus was talking about how to be charitable and to love thy neighbor and to take care of other people. And they asked, but who is our neighbor? Like, who is it? How do we help? And Jesus started saying that there was a man, that he was assaulted by some thieves that took everything and left him to die. And that 3 different people, one religious person came, observed that, but just walked by. And the other one, which was more of an intellect, he came as well and then walked by. And then the third was the Samaritan, which the people at that time saw as lesser than them, because they didn't really have kind of like a religious belief. So the Samaritan, he stopped and he looked at that person, and he came down from his horse, and he did what he could do at that moment. And he couldn't, because he had his things that he had to do. So he took that man and he took it to a hotel at that time, and he paid money for the man there to take care of that person. And then he said that he would come back to take care and to see how that person was. I don't know if you can see, but there's something wrong with my internet. So if it falls, I'm sorry. There's something wrong with my internet. So there's 2 aspects that we could focus on. So we can focus on the step-by-step of helping someone, and which is, for example, he gave an example that it doesn't matter if you have a lot of spiritual or religious knowledge, but if you don't put into practice what you're doing, then what's the point? The other one, if you have that much intellectual knowledge, but you don't use that to make the community or the society better, or to assist somebody, that there's no point. And the last one was the Samaritan. And what did he do? So this is really a step-by-step guide to help a person helping another. So what did he do? He stopped first. He observed that person. He came down from his horse, So he really connected to the person that was suffering in a personal level. He wasn't on the top of the horse helping out. He was in the same level as the person. He did what he could at that moment. And then he took it to somebody who could help. And then he followed up. So that is a step-by-step. So we could study the parable under that perspective. But if you look at the people, so the archetypal people in this parable, we can learn a lot about ourselves. For example, it seems like that there's the man that was there, hurt, and there was 3 other people, but actually you have the thieves, you have the person in the hotel, which I don't know the name that it was called back then, that helped. So these are aspects of our personalities. It might be that at some point we are thieves to other people, that we, maybe not physically, we remove everything that a person has, but we can do that emotionally. And sometimes we are the person who needs help because maybe we needed to pay more attention to what was happening around us and within us, and we, at some point, we fell and we needed help. But we can also be, there's aspects of personality where we are the people who are very religious and spiritual, and we think that that's beautiful, and we love everything, but we don't actually put into practice what we're learning or what we're studying. Or we have this huge intellectual knowledge and knowledge of vast philosophies, but that doesn't really translate into something really concrete and that benefits others. So that's the other archetype in the parable. And finally, you have the Samaritan, which in this situation was the model that Jesus used in behavior towards another human being. So you see, just in these little 5 minutes, I think, or maybe a little bit more, we could see 2 completely different levels within the same parable. And believe me, we can spend years